Good morning to all the folks who are interested in learning about audio video technology and how to run live sound. I imagine some of you out there are volunteers. Some of you guys are paid staff. If you're watching this video, you're probably interested in learning more. You're probably just starting out and you're trying to get your head wrapped around what it means to run live sound. And so I'm making this video as I drive to the church, as if you were coming along for a ride with me, and you were going to be kind of shadowing me today and what we're doing. And so if you've been following along, I got audio lessons playlist up here where I'm putting all the audio lessons into their own playlist. And we've talked about the last few videos, we've talked about properly labeling media once it's recorded. We've talked about how to turn your system on and off, the importance of knowing how the signal flow is set up, being able to trace that signal path throughout your entire system. We've talked about 3 ways that you can create signal flow documentation. You can create those signal flows. And so I'm trying to think. So if you were coming along for a ride with me and you're headed to the church today, you've never done sound before, we'd probably start to talk about mixing strategy. And I haven't really gotten into this a whole lot yet. I'll probably talk about setting levels too. So I guess I could talk about either setting levels or mixing strategy, which they're pretty much joined at the hip. I mean, setting levels, I guess, is its own thing. So yeah, even before you mix, it's important you've got the system turned on. Let's talk about setting levels. And okay, what do you do next? Now hopefully you're going to be there and get everything plugged in and all the microphones and DIs good to go before the musicians walk in the door. But that's in the perfect world. In reality, you may not always know what your input channel count is going to be. You're not going to always know how many microphones or how many DIs or how many, you name it. You're not going to necessarily know. You're not going to know exactly where. If you can get into a workflow where you've got certain channels that are kind of always vocal mics or always guitar, always bass, always drums, you might be able to get into a nice little groove where you can have a lot of the work done ahead of time. But let's just assume you've got a blank slate. How do you know where to turn that trim knob up to? So when we talk about setting levels and gain structure, there's 2 ways you might want to think about it. Now, one would be, setting the overall master gains of the system. So you've got amplifiers and EQs and DSPs and all kinds of stuff that might have like an internal setup page where you've got I guess I think of it as like a global gain setting. So you've got to have like a global system-wide gain structure between devices. But that's like a more advanced thing that I even need to dive deeper into and study more. I've been researching a little bit about that, how to tune a system. But what I'm talking about is if you're a board operator, an entry-level volunteer, you're probably not going to be thinking about that type of stuff quite yet. Well, you should start to be thinking about it. You're going to be thinking about like setting the gain for each channel. So a guitar that's plugged in, you're going to want to set the gain. You're going to want to set that trim knob. For a vocalist that's up there on stage, you're going to want to set the trim or the gain for that vocalist. So every single source up there is going to have a gain or what's known as a trim knob. And this is different from the fader that you push up. This is completely independent of that. And this is where you really want to have your eyes help you by looking at a meter. And it's kind of challenging. You have to work with the talent, the musician, and you have to convince them or try to encourage them to deliver a authentic sound check. And it's sometimes can be pretty challenging, especially when you're working with musicians that aren't familiar with what a sound check really does. And the biggest challenge you'll have when you're setting this level is knowing where to set it. In a digital system, I recommend you want to be right around the ballpark of -14 on your meter. Some people might say -12, some people might say -18. It kind of depends on the instrument. It depends on the dynamics of that instrument. But you want to set it somewhere in the ballpark of -14 in a digital system. In an analog system, you're going to want to set that gain, that channel gain, to 0. So just remember that. I've mentioned this in a previous video. I think I talked about, I think I talked about gain structure already. Well, revisiting it. Yeah, you definitely want to have -14 for digital, and 0 for an analog system. So you'll have to figure out whether you've got an analog or a digital system. But what you want to do, but going back to communicating with musicians effectively, you want your musician to deliver a performance-worthy phrase or passage or section of their performance that day. So you'll often hear a lot of guys, do check 1 2, check 1 2 3 4 5. They're talking into the microphone. That's definitely part of the sound check, and that's helpful to get things into the right area. But the biggest challenge is when you got a vocalist up there and you say, all right, give me a sound check. Let's check that vocal mic, Susie or whoever. And she goes up to the microphone and she says, hello, hi, hello. No, you don't understand. You've got to belt this out. You got to pretend like you're singing in an actual performance. And they're just like, It's really hard to set levels specifically for that person when they're not delivering like an accurate portrayal of what they're going to be doing in the context of the band. So sometimes it's easier to just have the band. This is personal preference for if you're mixing. You might want to just say, hey guys, just take it from the top. I'm gonna put you in there quiet and just set some really rough levels and just say, hey guys, just take the first song from the top, and then you kind of hear what each person is doing. But this definitely can be a challenging thing to set levels and make sure your gain is good. So when that person is singing into the microphone, you're soloing, so you're seeing that specific channel on your meter, and you're watching, where are those levels kind of averaging, and your eyes are just kind of like a reference. You never want to mix with your eyes, but what you want to do is use that as another data point to kind of see where the levels are. Definitely your ears. Your ears are the most important thing, because you might hear some stuff that the meters don't pick up, and it's really important to really use your ears the most, and that meter is just kind of a visual reference to make sure you're kind of in the right ballpark. But anyway, so if you're mixing and you're learning about mixing, I hope this helped you out. That's probably what I would chat with you about if you came along for a ride with me this morning. So anyway, keep up the good work out there, and keep striving to learn more about audio technology and video technology and lighting too, I guess. All right, have a good day, guys. Don't want to forget the lighting, guys.